I'm recording.
So I'll start by asking you to introduce yourself. So as we cut and slice
Sure.
this, so that it'll be. So you want to start with that, and then I'll take it from there.
I'm O. Ross McIntyre from Lyme, New Hampshire, USA. Glad to be with you, Alex.
Thank you, Ross, and welcome. So today's Sunday, Symposium Sunday, when we have a brunch together. Like there is Wimbledon breakfast on Sunday, so that was kind of something that I thought at some point when we planned this. So we're together in the home of Marilyn David Friesman after spending together last 36 hours.
Sure.
You came from Vermont and you've been coming to Symposium for a while.
Yes, we came from New Hampshire, where we have two addresses. I'm recently married, 7 years ago now, after my first wife died. Helen had a home in Vermont, and I had a home in New Hampshire. We can't neither of us will give up our friends and things we have around our home. So we're maintaining two houses. We go back and forth between them.
Good. I think why I have that Vermont connection is that's probably where we first met in person at Paddler's Gathering in Vermont.
Yeah, I think I probably met you at one of the symposiums here first, but we didn't get to know each other until you came to the smaller meeting in Vermont.
Right.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming all the way. I know we have our reasons that we want to be here on this weekend. Tell me, why do you come?
Well, it's a long story, but I love canoeing. I love the out of doors. I get along with most people who paddle. There are a few paddlers that I don't get along with, but I find that it's an enriching experience. I love to hear other people's stories. I can't get enough of descriptions of rivers and mountains and snow and white water and good food at the campsite and experience with wildlife and experiences with weather, with things that can go wrong while you're in the out of doors, but can be set right if you have the right attitude and the right knowledge. And I love it. And I spent my life as a physician and teacher in a medical school and a researcher, and had some important responsibilities on the national scene in cancer research in the United States, which were really overpowering in terms of the amount of time I had to spend and the amount of tension that I had to deal with on a minute-by-minute basis. And the greatest outlet I had, the thing that kept me able to continue to work like that, was the few times I could escape to be with some buddies around a campfire after a day of paddling.
And I think there probably were more than few times. I mentioned this the last time in my closing remarks, or when I was introducing you actually, that you wrote the book that's very close to my heart called Paddle Beads. And it's a collection of stories from the places where you paddled. And you paddled in some different places, let me put it that way.
Sure.
And so I never asked you when that book came out, quickly, how that came to be. Was it recently published, or is it something that
it was published in 2010?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it at a time my wife, a late wife, was ill, and shortly after her death. And I wrote it in part as a love story, love of canoe, love of another person. And through my life, I've had times when I've been canoeing or with other people, and things have happened, and it just has told me as I'm experiencing these events that I must write this down. I will jot down a little something that will help me keep it in the memory until I can treat it more definitely with in words, flesh it out. But I love to try to describe this kind of events for other people to hear about. So
thank you, and thank you on behalf of all of us paddlers who read it, and on behalf of future generations that are yet to discover it. I want to go back to this weekend in particular. You've seen symposiums, so how do you feel the symposium went?
It went fine. One of the one of the things I had to do as a physician and teacher and researcher was to put together all kinds of events that are the sort of medical equivalent of this. And I know what a tremendous job it is to invite people who are going to share their expertise with others or tell their stories to others. And I did learn from that there are some people who will always talk longer than the allotted amount of time, and who have not done what the organizers would like them to do, or not presented in the way that the organizers would like. But you have an excellent track record for this session. I think we used to joke that I used to, in one of our conference rooms, I had a cane that I threatened I would get the cane out and wave it as suggesting that I would yank the person off the podium, away from the podium. So my heart goes out to you when someone throws your schedule off. But in the case, it's amusing when you were concerned about one person who was going on longer than he should have. He still had an important story to tell, and it's too bad he didn't plan his presentation a little better. But even the person who ran over had a really important tale to, and a tragic tale to recount, and it was worth it. So it's always a mix. Some people are eloquent, some people are dull but show interesting pictures, and so on. And the overall impression is just wonderful.
What would be your message to someone who's never been at a symposium but is watching this right now? Where would they find inspiration? What would be reason for them to come?
Well, I think all of us are different. Some people cannot learn anything by reading. They have to see it and experience it. Other people only can learn from somebody talking to them. Other people have to, and in my view, you offer all three. You show them the person. The person shows them the data and shows them the pictures and talks to them. And one of the things we don't do at the symposium is give time for discussion, because that could, some of the people present, there at least probably one or two of your presenters this time, if we'd had discussion, we'd still be talking, because their subject is so interesting and is so controversial, and there's so many different opinions out there. But some people only learn during that question and answer. So I think everybody who's here goes away with a lot of things that even I've been paddling for for now over 70 years, and I come away from this with new things I've learned.
I want to wrap up with some thoughts about George.
Yeah.
This is the first symposium without George, and I know how much you feel the loss and how much I feel it, how much all of us feel it.
Sure.
And you so eloquently wrote that in your note earlier in the spring of last year.
Yeah.
And listening to yesterday, I know it was a tough moment, but at the end of the day, we're so thankful and grateful that we have been part of this story that George
Sure.
started, and
Yeah.
hope that that story will continue in the years to come.
Yeah. I was steeled to read that piece without getting emotional, and I knew I could do it without any crack in my voice, and I was sure it was going absolutely smoothly. And then Dave Hatfield sang right before it, and his song included some of the same points I was going to make about George, and it brought George back into my life with an intensity that was just beyond control. And so I started off with one lame foot, and because we both talked about teaching, about education, about the story, about imperturbability, about peace, about optimism, about how to make things go your way, and how not to turn back or get discouraged. And those are important issues in anyone's life who is trying to accomplish something. And so suddenly George was right there. And then it's hard to talk in that way about somebody who's right there.
I'll say in closing that by we I mean many of us who are somewhat younger than you are going to continue to look to people like you to remind us of those things. Not that we need reminding per se, but just hearing it from someone like you, it comes across as a very special message. And we all each feel George's presence in each of our own way, but not many people can say it so eloquently as you can. So I want to thank you again for coming and for sharing that with the rest of us.
Well, Alec, thank you very kindly. You've got a legacy to deal with, and you're doing fine. And one of the wonderful things about living long, and I'm getting longer and longer, is that more and more of the things that we've done in life assume a perspective. And one can actually, suddenly I realized that the number of generations between me and the last ice age are not all that many. It's a wonderful world we live in.
Thank you. Thank you, Russ. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Great.
Great. My name is Scott Ellis. I'm from Vermont, and this is my first time ever going to the Canoe Symposium here in Toronto. It's actually my first time in Toronto. Really cool experience, and to come in here and just be with my people, these are the canoe people here, is extraordinary. And to be inspired by some of the great trips that people have been on, and kind of opens your eyes to new opportunities and new things. It was also a pleasure to be able to speak and share my passion with a very nice large audience that was well receptive of the whole experience, and I highly recommend it. It's something that's fun. If you love canoes, then you should totally check out the Canoe Symposium.
Tell us briefly about your presentation, Scott.
Yeah, so my presentation, my mission in life is to get people outside, and I'm using YouTube and as a video platform to share my experiences in the outdoors, and then also put that up so everybody can see. I hope to inspire, entertain, and inform my viewers about getting outside and show them some great opportunities. And it's not this crazy, dangerous thing you have to overcome. Like, getting outside is just fun. It's relaxing. It's healing. And I think everybody needs to try it.
What are some of the special things you take away? We had 18 presentations over 2 days with few introductions at the beginning. Is there anything that stands out for you?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. What stands out? You know, there's a lot of people who love canoes, and they love canoes and use them in very different ways. And being in Canada also, and just realizing how important the canoe is to the Canadian culture. Being someone from the States, you know, I love canoes. I'm passionate about it, and there's a little bit of jealousy of how much Canadians really have embraced that vehicle that I love so much too.
You're also involved in helping another paddling gathering in Vermont.
That's right.
Just a few words about that.
Yeah, so in Vermont, there's another great group that gets together at the Hulbert Outdoor Center, and that's where I started getting involved with this group. And it's, once again, people that just love paddling and being out. Winter camping as well is a big passion there. And that it's a great place. You know, it's where I got married as well. So it's a very special place in my heart to go to the Hulbert Outdoor Center and also meet another group of great people there that love to get outside.
Scott, thank you for coming. We'll see you in Vermont. We'll hopefully see you back here again, and have a safe trip home.
I would love to be back, and thank you for having me. It was
You're
great.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ruby, I came to know you first through our mutual friend, Fred Skip Pessel.
Yeah.
When he was here a couple of years ago, and then later when we met in Vermont, at some point he told me about your family, and I knew your dad through stories and through things I read. I didn't know the story of the family and the kids, so he was the one that brought you into my world. And it took us a couple of years I think we connected late last year, but it was always a thought that the time will come when we'll meet and you'll be able to come and share your experiences at the symposium. And so we're sitting here at home of David and Marilyn Friesen. It's Sunday, Symposium Sunday. Start by introducing yourself first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm Ruby Zitzer. I'm 20 years old, and I was born and raised in Bozeman, Montana, and I'm currently going to school in Arizona.
Great.
Yeah.
So, this was your first symposium in Toronto.
Yeah.
Tell me, what are your overall impressions?
It was awesome. I have never seen so many people come together for canoeing. And just so many different angles of canoeing. It's not like people are here because they do these crazy epic trips, all of them, but some of them are very passionate about canoers' art pieces or canoes in general or filming and anything. Yeah.
In that, I see a message, perhaps to folks that have not been at the symposium yet, who might be thinking about coming in the future. Was there anything that kind of stood out for you in particular? What was the overall kind of one impression that you're walking away with?
That canoeing is healing for not only me, but many people. And that it is an outlet, a healthy outlet that people need in their lives. And to have the opportunity to do it is a big opportunity, and it's something that was handed to me as a kid, and it took me a while to realize how special and healing it is for me and many other people.
Tell me a little bit about your presentation. What was your talk about?
It was about my family a lot and how I was raised basically in a canoe ever since I was in the womb, and then how I took these passions of my parents and what they passed on to me and did a trip of my own with my brother and a friend and a cousin. Yeah.
What are you dreaming about now when you look ahead?
Maybe some life clarity. I feel like my life is kind of all over the place at this point, and I think 20s are confusing. You're constantly like, you have all these opportunities, and it's a very selfish time in your life, and you're trying to figure out what you are going to contribute to society. And I don't think that'll do one thing for my entire life, but what's something I want to study and try to do for a good chunk of time and still be happy, because a life goal is finding and pursuing my passion and being excited to go to work every day.
When I look at that group of people in Symposium Amphitheater, I think one of the special things is to have so many people in one place over the course of 2 days that enjoy all of those topics so much. And I always feel there's that special energy in that place.
Yeah.
Did you feel that?
Definitely, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, when you go back home, you'll give our best regards to your family, to your mom and dad, and to Skip. And we're looking forward to a day when we can do this again.
For sure.
Maybe as a family thing. For
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ruby, for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe not. Yeah, stop. So if you want to introduce yourself by name and where you come from.
My name is Ron Chambers, and I was born and raised in the Yukon, and I grew up and spent most of my life in the Kluane Lake area. And Kluane is Klu, which is a big fish lake area, and Kluane National Park, which is now National Park and National Park Reserve. So that's my home. And that by the name of Kluane, and my oldest sister's name is Kluane, so it's pretty important to my heritage, to that area, that name, and the place.
I'd like to thank you for coming all that way by way of flying to Ottawa and by train to Toronto to be with us on this symposium weekend and to share the story of who you are and your heritage. It is your first symposium. How do you feel? How was this past 2 days for you?
Well, it's the things you do in life. It's like anything. If you get a group of people who have like mind ideas of what they like to do and adventures and things, then a symposium like this is absolutely fantastic, because it's not always you have an opportunity to be with people who have similar ideas with, no matter where in the world I think you come from. Even if you don't speak the language, I would think that you have something in common to the people you're here with in the symposium. And I found that the disappointment is that you don't have the opportunity to talk to everybody, and in such a short time. But you can appreciate what everybody's doing, because if they weren't doing it, you would like to be doing it, and to me that's the feeling I had. And even though I haven't been to places some of the people have been, I can appreciate what they were doing and why they were there, and that to me is a big value.
Tell me a little bit about your past experiences. You've done a lot of things in your life. You work for the park, you're active in the community. I saw your name on Chamber of Commerce website. You're elder in the Wolf clan of your community. You're involved in many things and have been for some time.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if it's just a matter of where you're from, or part of the reason would be just the fact that maybe you develop that imagination that life is an adventure, and to take advantage of an adventure, you have to get involved in it. So I guess that's kind of the way I've looked at it, and I've been involved with things. Part of it's my artwork. I've done artwork since I was quite young, mostly a carver, but not a lot of painting, but I've done some carvings, and then performance culturally. That was important to me, and that gets you involved in things. And then just a small community. People get involved in the community. Well, to me, the Yukon Territory is like a small community in a way. And so then as things are happening, without even thinking about it, you get involved. And then, of course, where you live is part of the adventure. So when I went to work for Parks Canada, I was a park warden for about 22 years. And just a job was the adventure. So I'd never skied in my life till I was about 30 years old. I used snowshoes, been on dog teams, but ended up working on a ski hill in Jasper, Alberta. So then I learned to ski. So it was another perspective of life that I've been aware of, and it's been with me ever since, that sort of thing. So yeah, just where I'm from helped me develop as to what I do. And I'm lucky enough that there's enough things going on that is adventure and fun and challenging too, of course.
You're not bored.
I'm not quite sure what boredom is. Things can get a little slow sometimes, but boredom is probably something that I don't have to deal with too much. Because if nothing else, there's a carving that I haven't finished yet. And I got a number of them kicking around too.
You have canoe in your backyard?
Yep, I have a canoe and a couple of kayaks. Both kayaks are leftovers. One was a person had gone down the Tachini River, and I guess he had a stroke or something. And so when the family salvaged it, I bought the kayak off the family. And the other one was a guy named Blackadar who did some kayaking all over parts of the world and was, I guess, a fairly famous kayaker. I kind of met him, but he left the kayak down the Elsac River on a trip he was doing, and I was able to salvage it, and I have it in my backyard. And then I have 4 canoes of my own because I do some guiding, and I have some of them just at cabins that I have, and they stay there, and I have a couple canoes that I travel with whenever.
You and I talked about canoeing in our phone conversations before you're coming here. I think one of the things you shared is that not a lot of people in your community take to canoeing these days in the way that you do.
No, I was seeing this kind of with my family. The First Nations always see water and waterways as, way back when, historically, when you didn't have the safety vests and the thing we have today, they always saw it as a hazard. Even though they were on the water a lot, they had to get on it to get fish and things to survive. So they only utilized it, in its need to get out there and get the fish they need to feed the dogs and feed themselves. And so they never saw water as recreation as such. I never did learn how to swim properly. I never did. I do scuba diving, and that's not swimming. That's flippers take care of that. But I never did learn to swim. So my mother was really quite concerned when I was paddling around in a canoe. She just couldn't understand that. But that's not why I would canoe. I canoe because I want to see and smell and hear the land around me as I travel down the river. And that's quite different than using it as a source for food and whatnot. That's a total different perspective. And my concern in my community is to try to get some of our people to get out there and to see and smell the land again, and so that's where canoeing comes in that aspect.
If someone sees this who has never been at the symposium but has affinity to paddling, what would be your message? Is it worth it sitting here for the weekend looking at all of those presentations?
It's to come to a symposium like this is absolutely worth it, because I've run across things similar in a different way. Is that some of my carving and the artwork I do, and especially with a lot of my stuff is West Coast oriented as such, but interior First Nations as well, is that sometimes you feel like you're on an island by yourself, and if you don't go and meet other people who can appreciate what you're doing, you start questioning about whether what you're doing has much value anymore, if it's only just you and your immediate family that's dealing with it. But when you come to a symposium like this, all of a sudden your batteries get recharged again, because you see you're not alone. And I think people here at the symposium come from all parts of the country, and many times they could feel almost alone. And that works with my artwork as well. Sometimes I go to a conference with some art and I get fired up again. Next thing I got a carving on the go. Whereas if I hadn't gone, I might not have started it. So symposiums do that. And I think that's the real big value of them, is it gives everybody the recharge and also tells them that they're still on the right track.
That's a nice way to say it. Ron, thank you so much for coming all this way. We tremendously enjoyed having you here, and especially those of us who had a chance to speak to you a little bit from 500 people that attended. We especially appreciate it.
Well, I say goodish cheese for inviting me. That's it's definitely worth coming. That's for sure.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you again.
Well, yeah, good work
this
on that.
summer. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sure, and I really appreciate the fact that the people were here, and I was saying earlier about I've been a deputy chief and all these different things on conferences and political conferences and salmon committees and boards and committees. And if you had to sit through 12 hours of those boards and committees, you'd be sitting on the floor before long. Whereas a symposium, every presentation had something that you wanted to hear, So even though it's a long day, you don't even know it because the time went by. If I had to do this in Whiterston, some of the meetings that I've been to with the kind of political type meeting, there's no way. I would check out somewhere along the way and head off somewhere. I'd go to a store or something just to get away from it. But you can't do that with this because
you're gonna miss something.
Because every speaker has something that plugs into what you're doing, and so every one of them may not even be what you looked at the list and say, "Oh, I don't know, this one doesn't seem like it's going to be." And then when they get going, all of a sudden it's like, I didn't know that. Oh, well, there you go. Well, the fellow that presented the maps, and traveling across, well, that's totally removed from where I'm at. But it was interesting in the process and the history. So that was just as important as the rest then. But if I was going to make a check-off list as to whether you're going to attend this one or this one or this one, I may have checked off it because of that, right?
That's a good point.
But when I was there listening to him, that history is still relevant. So that's the value of the symposium there, that kind of thing.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the gift.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I
hope you get a chance to use it.
Really appreciate it. I will with my friend Ernie.
So when you go into Perth now, make sure you got a